There are penalties when you take withdrawals from a retirement account prior to age 59 and a half. But there are many exceptions, and that is the subject of this video. Welcome to the Financial Fast Lane. My name is Lane Martinson. In this video, we are talking about the exceptions to the 10% penalty that is triggered when we take distributions or withdrawals from a retirement account prior to age 59 and a half. And so now there are some rules that apply to both qualified retirement accounts such as 401ks, TSPs, 403bs, 457s, etc. They're employer-sponsored retirement accounts. Some of these exceptions apply to all of those and IRAs, which are individual retirement accounts, okay? So I'm first going to list out the exceptions that apply to both. And then there are some exceptions that will apply only to qualified plans, and there are some exceptions that will apply only to IRAs. And I will list those out separately. All right? So number one that applies across the board is age 59 and a half. So once you've reached age 59 and a half, you can take withdrawals from any of your retirement accounts. There will not be a 10% penalty at that point. Now, of course, taxes would still come into play, but you don't have that extra penalty. Number two is birth or legal adoption. So this is something that's new as of the Secure Act. And so if you have a birth in your family or a legal adoption, you can withdraw from your retirement account penalty-free up to $5,000 to help cover some of the additional costs that might be associated with that. So that could come in handy. Number three is for unreimbursed medical expenses in excess of 7.5% of AGI. So if you have an unusual amount of unreimbursed medical expenses, once that dollar amount exceeds 7.5% of your adjusted gross income, you can now cover that extra expense by taking withdrawals from a retirement account in that situation. So you want to be careful with all of these exceptions. Please, take this as educational, but not as specific advice. Your specific situation you should consult with a tax advisor. Number four is what we call a 72T. It is taking substantially equal periodic payments for a minimum of 5 years or until age 59 and a half, whichever is longer. And so another way to think of this is it's kind of taking an annuity payment. You can be whatever age, you can be a younger age, and you can take distributions penalty-free, but you have to do it. They have to be substantially similar. It has to happen at least every year for a minimum of 5 years. And so if you're let's say if you're 50 years old and you start taking withdrawals, it's basically kind of an annuity type payment, and that's going to continue all the way until you're age 59 and a half before you could stop doing that. But let's say you were 58, so you're close to that 59 and a half age, but if you started taking withdrawals based on the 72T exception, then you would have to continue that exact same thing for the next 5 years, so well past age 59 and a half. So I just want to make sure you understand that. There's different ways to calculate how much would need to come out. You can use an RMD model. They can be done through kind of a lifetime amortization schedule. Anyway, you got to be really careful and make sure you have professional help on that if that's the case. But it is a legitimate way to take money out of a retirement account early if that's something you need to do. All right, number five would apply only to those who are in the military in active duty. And so there are some situations there. There are some real details. You want to make sure it would really apply to you if you're in that situation. Number 6 is the federal tax levy. So if you happen to have tax liens against you and they're coming after you for some back taxes, you can take money out of a retirement account to cover that, and that will be an exception to the 10% rule as well. Number 7 is if you became disabled. And so now this is not like it's some temporary, this is talking about kind of permanent long-term disability. If you are disabled or become disabled, then that is the 10% penalty is waived when you take distributions. And then number 8 is death. So that's basically where inherited IRAs or inherited qualified accounts, those rules come into play. The people that inherit your qualified accounts are not going to have that 10% penalty to deal with. They will, of course, have taxes to pay. But number 9 is removal of excess contributions. So if you have mistakenly contributed more than was allowed, then you have an excess contribution in your account, whether it's a 401k or an IRA. And if you leave an excess contribution in there, you're going to have a 6% penalty for every year that it stays in there. So you have to take it out. So when you remove that excess contribution, there is no 10% penalty on that. Okay? So all of those applied to qualified plans and IRAs. Okay, so next I'm just going to talk about what are some of the exceptions specific to qualified plans only. Okay? So number 1 is the rule of 55. So this is a unique rule. It only has to do with company-sponsored plans, and it has to do if you separate service or you retire, once you've reached the age 55 or older, assuming you leave the 401k there with that employer and don't roll it over into an IRA, then you can take distributions penalty-free. So instead of 59.5, it's actually 55 in that case. Now, even though the IRS allows for that to be the case, not all company plans support it, because companies can set, they don't have to allow everything that the IRS allows necessarily, right? So you would want to check with your plan to make sure. Now, number 2 here is the rule of 50. And so it's similar to what I just said about the rule of 55, but the rule of 50 only applies to public safety employees. So with a government retirement plan that qualifies. So a lot of times you might have police officers and other public safety professionals who retire early, and if once they hit age 50, they can take distributions without that 10% penalty. And then number 3 is qualified domestic relation orders, or quadros. So that has to do with a divorce. So if you've gone through a divorce or going through a divorce, there is an exception there to the 10% penalty. So whatever that, the quadro, whatever the court orders, if there's a separation of retirement accounts, which is a common thing, if there's, the funds can be distributed to a spouse or a former spouse, for example, without the 10% penalty. Taxes would still apply. What most people would do in that case is, instead of taking distributions, they would actually they split the account and do a rollover into an IRA. Okay, so that's those are what's unique for the qualified plans. And now some of the exceptions that are unique to only IRAs. Okay, so with an IRA, number 1, you can take withdrawals for higher education, so long as the education costs are qualified I mean, it's going to be tuition and books and so forth. It can be for yourself. It could be to cover for your spouse. It could be for children or even grandchildren. So that is not something you can do with a 401k, but you can with an IRA. Number two is health insurance for those that have become unemployed. So if you got laid off and you need to make some payments for health insurance premiums, you may be able to take distributions from a retirement account without that penalty. One of the conditions is that you have to have been receiving unemployment compensation for 12 consecutive weeks. And so as long as you meet that qualification, you can take funds out of the retirement account to pay for healthcare premiums for you or for your spouse or for dependents. Then number three that's unique to the IRA is for first-time home buyers. And so you can withdraw up to $10,000 to go towards the purchase of a new home. If your spouse has an IRA, they could also take out $10,000 penalty-free. Of course, taxes would have to be paid on that, but there would be the exception to the 10% penalty. Now, what is a first-time home buyer? It doesn't necessarily mean that it's your very first house you've ever bought. If you have not owned a home for at least 2 years, and now you're going to be buying one, you are considered a first-time home buyer. You qualify from that. So, hey, I hope this was helpful to you. I know there's a lot of rules and a lot of exceptions to the rules. I have another video here where I discuss the Roth IRA withdrawal rules. So you may want to check that out. And I look forward to seeing you in the next episode of the Financial Fast Lane.